Welcome to the Voices of Otolaryngology podcast series, where we spotlight diverse perspective and insights within the field of otolaryngology. I'm your host, Rahul Shah. Let's jump into it. Welcome to the Voices of Otolaryngology. I am thrilled today to be with Dr. Witsell, mentor, even though he doesn't know that, of me and many of you in our specialty. When I think of David Witsell, I think of research quality, the Cheer Network, a lot of stuff. Dr. Witsell, welcome.
Thank you so much. It's nice to be here and chatting with you about research.
Yeah, really excited. This is a audio only version because right now I have a face for radio. So I think everybody will be just fine. We're going to put in animation. I really want you to tune in to hear Dr. Witsell. Dr. Witsell, where are you these days? Maybe a little bit about what you're up to, and then we can actually look backwards a bit, and then I can have you help us look forward with Reg-ent.
Yeah. So I've retired. I retired in 2019 and have really enjoyed some alternative career moves in different areas, and that's been good. Still doing research, but it's not in medicine. So I do a little bit of consulting for NIDCD and other organizations, but I've moved on using research methodology to do other things.
Wonderful. May I ask where you're based out of these days, where you're living?
I'm in Chapel Hill.
Oh, wonderful.
Carolina still.
Yeah, you brought up NIDCD, and I think it's really important for our Academy members to know the Academy's working hard. I don't want to use the word lobbying or politicizing, but what we do, getting in front of people. And I'm stunned, Dr. Witsell, when I have started looking back at what has come out of there. Unbelievable. It's really transformed hearing healthcare. Obviously, you would agree with that, but I'm when you really look at the compendium of work, I don't know if you want to talk about that. It's off script, but go ahead.
Yeah, NIDCD has done so much, and I think one of the challenges has been that the mission areas are so broad that it's hard to get a handle and support all the different professional and research activities, but they've really done a great job with a committed staff and have done really amazing things to change clinical practice and clinical practice with a relatively small budget. So they're making good investments, I think, for our field and for audiology and speech pathology.
Yeah, well said. I will let our members know just yesterday, myself and Harry DeCabo were meeting with congressional staffers during the August recess. We had lengthy meetings on NIDCD, the value, the importance of the budget, and trying to get them to understand our work. And they were very receptive and They really appreciated, like I said, the amount of work and contributions to hearing health are staggering. And we're going to try to put it together in a 1 or 2 page letter that is friendly, but also shows them the great work.
Yeah, hearing health and the other mission areas. We can't forget about those.
That's right. Well, shall you try, this is going to be fun, maybe summarize for people that don't know you, a little bit of your career in just a couple minutes? I don't mean to insult you, but some of the trajectory, because I'm sure people are connected to you in many different ways, but how'd you get here? You've been retired 6 years. You look happier and healthier than ever. God bless. But walk us through a little bit about your professional journey, if you don't mind.
Yeah. Well, I'd always done research through medical school. And then when I went to UNC for residency, I actually did head and neck cancer research on the side at that time, Glaxo Wellcome. Would go when I had time to develop some cell lines and do some research there. When I was recruited to Duke, it was clear to me that I couldn't be excellent at basic science research and an excellent surgeon. I mean, I think there are trade-offs there. And so I looked for a pathway in research that was, let's say, better aligned with clinical medicine. So I started looking into outcomes research and clinical research, and then did a master's of health sciences at the Duke Clinical Research Institute. And, and then the career really took off, especially when it dovetailed with some of the initiatives of the Academy. It really launched me in the direction that I ended up going, and really enjoyed that career for many, many years.
Thank you for such a humble and brief synopsis of your contributions. When I think of Dave Witsell, I think of research quality, outcomes research, really transforming our field. Two words that we hear associated with you, and I'd love for you to define those and talk about the origins. Best ENT and cheer network. You're probably so sick of probably the word cheer and capital best ENT, but could you take either one of those? Tell our members how those seeds that you planted blossomed into trees and now perhaps even forests.
Let's see, starting with Best ENT, I mean, everything is about a team and collaboration and colleagues that you meet at the annual meeting. And I think from just common interest and participation in the subcommittees, Mickey Stewart, Tim Smith, Bevan Yu, and myself got together and thought, what do we need to do to build evidence for successful treatments, best ENT? And working through that subcommittee for outcomes research, evidence and outcomes research, we built some important studies that were practical and important, and were focused on the practice of otolaryngology and where the evidence needed to be filled in a prospective, multi-center way rather than a single center way. So that's really Best ENT, and that initiative through the Academy is really what launched everything else after that.
Dr. Witsell, I think I'm 50 years old, and so there's probably half of our Academy older than me and half below. That's just a fact. And I think I looked at that. Let's talk to those half that are younger than me. These days, we take research and quality in the same sentence. We understand what outcomes research is. That wasn't the case 15, 20 years ago. And I know that because I sat around committee tables, and you and those other colleagues you mentioned, they got it. It took me a while to get it, but it wasn't so easy. Can you talk about what motivated you? Why did you see that there was a future? Because I'm going to draw upon that in a couple minutes later when we prognosticate what's ahead, but it was not easy when you were doing it. You were up against an uphill battle.
Yeah, that's really true. I think, as I thought about clinical research, there's this single center, highly controlled study that has oftentimes a little relevance to the practice of clinical and surgical medicine. And when you're talking about outcomes research, you're talking about a different methodology that people didn't understand. It was really about enlisting private practitioners and academic medical centers to work together in a less rigorous but broader way to understand the outcomes that are associated with treatments. And I've always kind of said, with a rigorous clinical trial, you collect specific endpoints that are tightly controlled. Outcomes research has a little messiness to it, and that's what it's supposed to be, because clinical practice is a little messy. And so really teaching that and relating that to colleagues was initially, a challenge. So, yeah, it was tough at the beginning, but I think people came along and saw the importance and relevance of it. And certainly NIH then came along and finally caught on to that and understood what practice-based medicine and outcomes research was. And now that's really morphed from outcomes and health-related quality of life, which were early terms with the Medical Outcome Trust, to research and quality, and they should be married. And that's what the Academy is really doing through Reg-ent.
So when I started on the journey in the early 2000s, and that's when I met you on PSQI committee and outcomes research, evidence-based medicine work, that was probably the peak of your contributions. People would make fun of me. I mean, it was hard to get the manuscripts published. And you said something, it's a little messy, it's a little not perfect, but everything you and I had been taught in med school was p-values, this construct, and it needed to be clean and binary. What was an aha moment? For me, it was just pounding the doors down, but it was people like you that had kind of paved that path. When did the light bulb go off that we have to frame it this way? You got NIH funding. That to me 20 years ago would have been unheard of for outcomes research. What was the paradigm shift that you had to convince people so that they would get it as an evangel yourself?
I think there's a lot of paradigm shifts, but what I kept harping on is that research is incremental. And I've found through my career with residents and colleagues, they want to jump to the definitive answer. They want to say, this is it. I solved the problem. This is the way we should do things. And it's never that way. It's never that way. Research is incremental, and finding those incremental steps, those critical incremental steps that can improve clinical care is what you need to be constantly working towards. It's a daily activity. It's not just one research study. There's a bigger strategy to understanding outcomes research by taking these incremental points. So, I think I talked about so many times, this is not the perfect study. This study is not going to answer all our questions, but it moves us in the right direction. And we can use that to jump off to the next study. And that's still something when I talk to colleagues or, other people, even in unrelated fields, that understanding things are always incremental. And you've got to adopt that standpoint and not think that this study or this piece of research is going to solve all the problems, because it never does.
What an awesome statement. Never considered it that way. I'm going to make an umbrella statement and then I'm going to contradict myself. Indeed, surgery is not incremental. We start a case, we finish a parotidectomy 2 to 4 or 5 hours, depending. We know at the end of the case what we've accomplished. But here's the contradiction. It is incremental. To do a parotidectomy, there's 5 or 6 steps. And we start by mastering each one of those, build the ladder together, and then incrementally we move forward. So very astute point. Thank you for sharing that. Yeah, I appreciate that. So Best ENT brought together thought leaders, really were the first in our specialty. And if I'm insulting anybody who is a predecessor, email me and they'll get a video cast with me. But you and your group got going with outcomes research, NIH funding, and then everywhere I start seeing the capital letters CHEER, cheer.
Right.
Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, so cheer was initially the brainchild of Maureen Hannley, who was the chief research officer years ago when I first started my career in collaboration with the Academy. And she was visionary in what she wanted to do, and also understood about incremental learning and research. And she had this viewpoint that we need to be collaborative, and really stood by that. One of her first initiatives was the Cogent initiative for the Academy, which was a cooperative outcomes group in ENT that looked into sinusitis and otitis media. That was hers, and that was a multi-center outcomes study, although it wasn't really called that back in the 90s. But CHEER really grew out of that. That Maureen Hannley laid the groundwork for that and came up with the moniker for it too.
I think it's always important, and when I walk through the Academy, and I mean this seriously, acknowledge the shoulders of giants that we stand upon. And thank you for Maureen Hannley. Could you just take a moment, tell people about her? I think it's really important. She was very special. I got to work with her near the tail end of her career, but obviously it looks like you all worked closer. And I did not know till you mentioned it, gives me chills. I didn't know Cogent was going on in the 90s. Wow, she was ahead of the curve. Can you talk a little bit about, and I believe it's Dr. Hannley, is that right?
Dr. Hannley, yeah. She was a PhD audiologist that was just an amazing woman. She was visionary and, came and worked for the Academy. I don't know when she started there, but she was well there before I came along. And she noticed the work that we were doing in outcomes research. I had initially started with an initiative called SOAR, Surgeon Outcomes Research Cooperative. And that was a general surgical outcomes cooperative. But Maureen noticed that we had met at annual meetings and chatted. And the Academy had this initiative, Cogent, which was having difficulties with recruitment. And since I had been doing some work in the multi-center outcomes field, she and the Academy asked if there were some ideas about collaboration that we could do between the Academy and the Duke Clinical Research Institute to accelerate that research. And so that was my first working relationship with Maureen. And from there, it just really blossomed. She was involved in Best ENT and almost all the research initiatives that I did for the following, 10 to 12 years. So she was really a force for the Academy, and she's really set up the grants program, the core grants program. That was her vision as well, which continues to support young investigators and residents in their research endeavors and setting them up for successful careers. So she's really scattered all throughout research and quality through the Academy. I think she's touched so many lives, and she has a legacy that will live on, not only through those of us who have well on in our career, but through the people that we teach about research. She's living that way. So there's a real legacy there with Maureen Hannley.
Thank you for doing a little side discussion there. I think it's really important we pass some of her learnings on. And I did not know that she was a PhD audiologist.
Yeah.
My only comment is there, can we all just get along? I mean, is that amazing? I did not know that. I'm also thinking of the legacy tree. I think of Maureen Hannley. I think of Jean Brereton, who worked with you and I and mentored me. And then I think of Chris Schultz. Chris and I used to sit across the table together a generation ago. And now she is our Senior Director of Research and Quality. Before we get back to CHEER, because I want you to describe CHEER, maybe one key learning from Dr. Hannley that you kind of just always guided you or helped you think. Obviously, she was a real innovator, Dr. Witsell, to what she was doing.
Yeah, the one key learning thing that Maureen always brought to the table was gathering consensus around a research initiative or a policy statement on research. She was always about getting together, bringing people together to have relevant discussions and important discussions about Academy research initiatives and policy statements for Congress. So it's about consensus and collaboration.
Love that. Thank you. So CHEER, if you remember the acronym, terrific. If not, that's okay. What was the concept of CHEER?
Yeah, CHEER is creating healthcare excellence through education and research. And it was really, the concept behind it was building a practice-based research network that married academic medical centers with private practices around them in their states. So it was about bringing these academic medical centers that signed on together with private practices that were around them and within their communities to do research together and to understand the patient population in the academic medical center, the patient population in the practice-based, community-based otolaryngologist's office, understanding the differences there and looking at the different outcomes. It was a big national collaborative effort that initially it was funded just to put the network together. And it was modeled after the other research networks that were very successful in, kidney research and diabetes research, all those previous initiatives that had built these networks. We studied those and then put together the CHEER network, hopefully taking the best parts of what they did and putting them all into the CHEER network.
Yeah, love it. Thank you for that description. We always look for catchy titles to draw people in, and I think we got one here. And I might title this episode, It's All About the Network.
Yeah.
Isn't it interesting? Because you talked about Dr. Hannley, you talked about Best ENT, you mentioned the predecessors, you mentioned Cogent, then you got into CHEER, and it's really about scaling that network. What kind of scale did Cheer get to? What are some of the projects you're most proud of? Maybe things that didn't get the finish line, and then we'll talk about how Cheer evolved.
Yeah. So Chris Schultz, who is now the senior director of research at the Academy, she was key in this whole Cheer initiative. At that point in time, Dr. Hannley had moved on, and Chris came and worked with me very closely, and actually was recruited to Duke to really help accelerate, organize, and scale Cheer. And so we were able to do that with 4 or 5 different academic medical centers, each of which had a number of community practices around them. The whole network, I think, at its highest point was about 30 sites, which is a lot. That's a lot of administrative and research organization that has to take place to manage and understand all those sites. One of the initial initiatives that was key is for each site to just describe their patient population, just by pulling diagnosis codes and treatment codes, all these early things that then fed into Reg-ent. It was really about how do you pull that data and share it with people so that better research can be done, so that you have the pilot data that really sets the research study up for success.
And Chris Schultz has her PhD in the early 2010s on, if I'm right, community participatory research, right? How do we move that forward? And what's really cool is, following the steps of Maureen, Jean Brereton, and Chris Schultz, we evolved the network. So then Cheer goes to scale, and obviously Reg-ent developed from it. If it didn't, I apologize, but in my mind I can see where you all were going. Are you able to talk about how it transitioned to Reg-ent? Did it not? Are there 2 separate paths?
That's a really good question. Did it formally transition to Reg-ent?
Yeah, I don't think it formally did. Yeah. No.
But what I think Cheer did, its most important role, and this is also true of Best ENT, is it laid down the knowledge base, the lexicon for people to understand Reg-ent, and to begin to understand what it means and what it feels like to collaborate and share data, and that it wasn't threatening, that it was something that could result in some real nuances of understanding, and potentially could be used to improve quality, because we can then get a better handle on what are the best strategies, what are the best practices. At the same time, the clinical guidelines were coming along, that whole initiative. So the membership was getting really familiar with research and quality from many different initiatives within the Academy. And that's really, to me, how research and quality came together. Is maybe they started separate a little bit for a while, but very quickly, I think the membership and the leadership recognized that they are really codependent when it comes to clinical medicine.
Very well said. And we must acknowledge the recent passing of Dr. David Nielsen, who had the vision, supported it. And of course, my predecessor, Dr. Jim Denaney, always supporting the concept of the network. Indeed, I remember right before I took this job, there was a executive committee meeting, August, I'm looking at the date, 2024, where Dr. Denaney said, to take Reg-ent to the next level, thinking about technology and AI, it's going to be about $3.5 million platform redesign. Exec committee agreed, and the board agreed. I mean, it's got to get you excited that this is what they're talking about, where we've come in 2 to 3 decades, that they know it's a multi-million-dollar investment to scale.
That's really amazing, because the initial investments were on the scale of $20,000.
Of course. Yeah.
But even that was generous. I mean, the board of directors really hadn't allocated that much money towards any kind of network research. So that, we were thankful for those initial seeds that the board of directors laid.
Yeah. I love analogies and mixed metaphors. So what came to my mind is a book I don't know the title of the book. Maybe it's called Taking Care of ENT Patients. Chapter 1 and 2 was a little bit about outcomes research, best ENT, Cogent, Cheer, all of that tremendous work. Probably the first few chapters. The middle chapters are Reg-ent, and you and I agree that there's a few chapters we're skipping over today because how we transitioned is not our scope today. But when you look at Reg-ent, what you know from Chris Schultz, Gene Brereton, Jim Delaney, what excites you? What worries you? What advice do you give us as an academy and a membership and the general member as we're building out Reg-ent? What should we be thinking about?
What should you be thinking about? Cheer tried to do an initiative like this by trying to access the medical records, and we did have some partners for that to pull down data and start to look at it from a quality standpoint. And number one, at least at that time, it was so labor intensive and siloed that it was very difficult to do. There were not agreements on data definitions, which made it incredibly difficult to really translate between different practitioners or different EMRs. And Cheer did not succeed at that. And I think the experience of that Gene Brereton and Chris Schultz went through in that particular initiative that didn't work was helpful probably in thinking about how Reg-ent could work. All these technical specifications are challenging, but they've got to be worked out, and you need an infrastructure to do that. And Reg-ent has been able to bridge that between practitioners in a way that, at least the NIH initiative of Cheer was not able to do. But Reg-ent also has the backing of the board of directors. It's got, I've never said to do anything for one reason. The beauty of Reg-ent is you do this thing and it has so many different reasons to do it. You've got quality, you've got billing, you've got research, you've got quality of care. There's so many reasons to do it. And so that Reg-ent's just been able to do that. And most research and quality codependent initiatives are able to bridge that. I think Reg-ent is really visionary and well, I don't know if it's visionary. It's a natural progression of where Best ENT and Cheer and all the different research initiatives that came before it. It's a natural outgrowth and improvement of those things. It's actually, it's just that, it's pretty amazing. It's got such great capacity beyond what it does right now to enlighten us on quality of care and research. So, it's pretty amazing platform if it's really accessed and used in innovative ways. I think it's exciting.
And that's, Dr. Witsell, why I actually jumped at the opportunity to lead the academy. I was looking at it, and these are trite words, but it's big data. It is 200 practices, 2,000 practitioners, 11.6 unique patients with 55 million encounters times 30 discrete fields. That's math I can't do.
Yeah.
But, we talked earlier about naming this episode, and I've just modified the name. To me, what I'm hearing you talk about, the progression and evolution, perhaps the title is, it's all about scaling the network. What we've done is taken the infrastructure you and the others have built, and we're trying to scale it. Data definitions are important, and I want to acknowledge you and the others for keeping us honest. Chris, with her PhD, Jocelyn Meyer, as you know, from our team, they are obsessed with data definitions. And I'm not, Dr. Witsell. So I live in the clouds. I mean that literally and figuratively. I'm at 30,000 feet, but they will not budge with data definitions. When we're looking at audiograms and creating an AI algorithm with our vendor, they are obsessed about the data definition. So thank you for calling that out.
Yeah, absolutely. Those data definitions are so key. They're so key in being able to interpret these large data sets.
Yeah, well, thank God for people like you, because you ask me, is it black or white? I'll say, it's like, it's gray. Let's move on. But they don't let me move on. Don't worry. They keep us honest. Just a couple more questions, and I'll give you back your time. We're very grateful to hear the journey. Chris and I meet weekly, Dr. Schultz and I, and we were talking about how do we get people to understand the history of where we came from. And so that's why we wanted to put you on with this, Dr. Witsell. It's important to memorialize Dr. Hannley and where we've been so we can think about what's next. So let me ask you, with your lens, we talked about the potential of Reg-ent. Agree, for MIPS, for reimbursement, for industry partnerships. Even now, with the tumultuous funding landscape, Reg-ent doesn't become irrelevant. It becomes more important than ever. Advice to us as an academy and members as we think about big data, Reg-ent, and bringing everything together. What's your pie in the sky? Where would you see us going, and what's your advice to us?
Well, what I'd like to really see happen is a very robust collaboration between Reg-ent and NIDCD and the other institutes. I think Reg-ent has the unique ability to provide pilot data in a way that and potential investigators can't get, and principal investigators. I think there's such a wealth of information there, and recruitment and finding patients for any clinical trial is challenging. But if you have a resource like Reg-ent, you should be able to identify the practices and the patients that could potentially be recruited into an important clinical trial, on age-related hearing loss. These clinical trials need to be multi-center instead of single center, and they need to have rigor, but they need to be based upon real data about real patients. And Reg-ent potentially can provide all that pilot data and actually save time by not having these investigators at institutions have to collect data for 2 or 3 years to find out how many patients they might have to potentially participate in an important clinical trial. If Reg-ent has that information, wow, you can really accelerate clinical research and outcomes research, and make careers for young faculty members and other people who are doing good research, and you can accelerate research and quality. So I think that a partnership between NIH and Reg-ent, specifically NIDCD and Reg-ent, would be a very, very interesting and dynamic partnership that has the potential to really accelerate research, clinical practice, and not have to wait 17 years for it to be translated into clinical care.
Now, what an awesome idea. There's something called MPFS, Medicare Provider Fee Schedule, and it got released in July, and there's a 60-day comment period. It's, I think, 1,800 pages long, something of that sort, and we're allowed to make comments. And I love your point. We were with the GOP's Dr. Caucus about 45 days ago. They had a 1-hour session, Dr. Witsell, on quality reporting registries. And just what you brought up is what they're looking for. And so I love it that you actually connected those dots. I heretofore hadn't. So I think it's something that we as an academy can advocate for through legislative pathways and then through the infrastructure of the government. And maybe that's what they're looking for. Private partnerships to drive things. Excellent point. Anything you want to add to that? Because I think my team's going to listen to this recording. That's brilliant. And that's what they're looking for. And we need to put it in front of them, serve it on a silver platter so that we can operationalize it.
Yeah, I really think that NIDCD and Reg-ent have a great potential to complement one another to the benefit of patients and investigators throughout our community and potentially worldwide. And if we can figure out how to make that partnership work,
I agree.
Wow, that's going to be a huge benefit to patients all over the world.
Yeah, I'm just thinking. You saw the news. OpenAI gave their platform to the government for $1. Right? Maybe we're even cheaper than that if you follow me. I hear you. We have it we want them to use it. So there shouldn't be barriers. So I love that. Just two more questions, or maybe one more question, and then I promise you I'll give you your time back. You mentioned you've been retired for 6 years and you're doing different kinds of research. Are you at liberty to talk about it? Would you prefer not to? Everyone's always curious, what is Witsell up to? So, I mean, you don't have to answer it, but I'm curious. I mean, how do you take scaling networks, engagement, outcomes? Are you at liberty to talk about what you're up to?
I do real estate investing.
Yeah.
So
cool.
Yeah, so that's about collecting information about communities.
Yeah.
What kind of needs there are in communities, what are the demands, and understanding all that information. So
yeah. Well, you can DM direct message me when you have a good internal rate of return. I'll jump on. But isn't it fun? Isn't science so fun?
It is, and everything is research.
Yeah, exactly.
Everything is research.
Exactly. I'll just conclude with this statement, then I'll give you the final word. I just want to give you gratitude. You're such a humble person, and I met you early in 2000s when I was nobody, and I'm still working on getting a bit better than nobody. But you were so kind and generous, spending time mentoring the future, people like myself, David Robertson, Michael Brenner, speaking on their behalf. Thank you. You were just so kind to us, and I wouldn't be here without people like you. So thank you very much. Can we give you the final word, and then we'll just end it there?
Yeah, well, my career with the Academy has just been so rewarding, and I wouldn't have made the strides that I made and the incremental contribution to clinical care that I did through the research if it weren't for the Academy. I think I'm very grateful for that, and I've always encouraged the young faculty members at Duke to get involved with the Academy. It's such a great place to launch your career. There's so many important people that can provide the insights and the infrastructure to build a important and exciting career that's very textured and has multiple aspects to it. So I'm thankful to the Academy and all the leadership of the Academy over the years who has supported research and myself, and hopefully through CHEER and some of these research initiatives, I've been able to pay it back.
Yeah, very well said. I'm glad you brought Maureen Hannley through the thread. Chris Schultz oversaw over 430,000 of core grants.
Yeah.
We were able to fund extra folks for the Cochrane Scholars. I mean, I'm sure you'd be over the moon about that, sending more and more people there, just investing in the future.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. You've got a great staff there, and you've got a lot of exciting roads in front of you with Reg-ent. I mean, that's really a great resource, and I hope to see that it moves research and quality and supports the practice of otolaryngology, both in the States and beyond that.
Well, you've given us a lot of excitement when you talk about NIDCD and partnering. I mean, that's how we take it to an entirely different scale.
Yeah.
So I appreciate that. And from your lips to God's ears to action, hopefully we can get it done. Thank you very much, Dr. Witsell, for giving us some of your time. Very, very appreciative. I think we can append the title of this, instead of Voices of Otolaryngology, maybe a Giant of Otolaryngology. Thank you so much, Dr. Witsell.
One other comment I'll make, and it's something that I always said at Duke, because when you talk about a partnership between NIDCD and the Academy, people will tell you how it can't be done. People say, no, we can't do that. And so the challenge is not to sit with that, but to actually think about how can we get it done?
Love it.
Where's the workaround? Where's the avenue to get us to that collaboration? So I hope that the Academy and NIDCD will find that workaround. We'll think about how they can collaborate together rather than just leaving it on the table as we can't do this.
Very well said. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure.
We hope today's episode sparked some fresh ideas. If it resonated with you, please subscribe and share it with friends. Have thoughts or suggestions? Use the feedback form in the show notes. We'd love to hear from you. And don't forget to follow us on social media for highlights, behind-the-scenes content, and updates. Thanks for listening. See you next time.